Over the last few years, there's been an uptick in political violence. While the motivations vary, the one last night remains unknown. Darius Johnson joins us now in studio. And Darius, you spoke to a political professor who has many years of experience with political violence.
Yeah, Erica, good evening. I had a 20-minute conversation with Robert Pape, a political science professor at the University of Chicago. Throughout his career, he's studied international politics, and since 2021, he's studied political violence in America following the January 6th insurrection. Pape's research and findings show how 270 million Americans feel about political violence and how we got here as a country.
And what we found right from the beginning is a significant amount of support for political violence in the mainstream. We found nearly 5 to 10% of American adults were supporting political violence to restore Donald Trump to the presidency over that 3-year period of time. It has ebbed and flowed. And we now find that 10% of American adults support the use of force to stop Donald Trump from becoming president. We saw 7 to 10% of the George Floyd protests were riots. Those folks thought they had legitimate reasons to riot. We saw the January 6th riot against the Capitol. Those folks thought they had legitimate reasons to riot. We saw the Palestinian, pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas protests, a fraction of which were storming buildings and throwing bricks and so forth and so on. And those folks thought they had legitimate reasons to be acting violently.
Robert, how did we get here? You're talking about acts of violence from more than 40 years ago, rearing its ugly head once again.
There are some superficial similarities to what's happening today to what happened in the 1960s. So we're fighting in the 1960s a foreign war, very controversial foreign war in Vietnam. We also have a situation where we have a wounded president, Lyndon Johnson in 1968, Joe Biden here. Now, he's not as wounded as President Johnson, but that you also have in 68 the Democratic Party in a crisis. Well, here we have a Democratic Party in crisis. So these are all the similarities, but some of the root factors are very different.
How did we get to this point?
We're going from a white majority democracy to a white minority democracy. But we're at the tipping point of change. So you're getting a lot of political anger around this major demographic change. And this demographic change is going to go on for about another 10, 15 years. So this is where Donald Trump came from in the first place. And this is why his movement is growing. We really need to recognize we're going through a crisis in our American democracy. And this is a manifestation of this crisis, what we just saw yesterday. And these continuous hopes that everything is just going to fade away is just simply unrealistic, given the dynamics I just explained.
Pape also got into social media and the spread of misinformation. He says social media continues to add fuel to the fire. I'm working on another version of this story for tonight at 10 o'clock. That story will focus on our democracy and how this is a moment of unity where condemnation is needed from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. Erica?
Yeah, it will be interesting to see, especially with the conventions coming up, how that rhetoric evolves, if at all.
Exactly.
Thank you, Darius.